Kentucky. Congressman, we thank you so much for your time tonight on what's been a long night. Where does your party go from here? Do you have any reason to believe that after 6 rounds of holding firm, some of these never McCarthy Republicans will actually decide to switch their votes?
Well, Lindsay, thanks for having me on the program, but I don't think the vast majority of pro-McCarthy Republicans in the Congress really think it's just about Kevin McCarthy. This is about making sure that we do not reward dysfunction, that we set the right precedent and tone at the beginning of this Congress so that we do not enable the minority party. If we want, as conservatives, to advance a conservative agenda, we need to be united, and we cannot enable the Democrats to control the Congress. The only way we can do that is to elect a Speaker of the House. And so I do believe we're making progress. Leader McCarthy has been meeting with some of the members who have had some concerns and some objections and have voted for other Republicans to be Speaker. I am told by members of individuals who are in those discussions tonight that they were making very positive progress, that they were very productive conversations. And that's why Republicans were able to unite tonight, to adjourn, to continue these very productive discussions, which I think will result in some additional reforms that will result in a unified conference tomorrow. And ultimately, we will elect Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House.
You feel 100% certain of that?
Well, nothing is 100% certain, especially in these times in Washington. But what I can tell you is that there are productive conversations that are going on right now. And I think every Republican understands that every day that goes by where we do not have a Speaker of the House, it's a day where we do not get to defund the 87,000 new IRS agents that the Democrat majority and the Biden administration passed to harass the American people. It's a day that goes by where we're not securing the border or we're not dealing with 40-year high inflation. It's a day that goes by where we don't have the necessary oversight of the Biden administration. So we owe it to our philosophy. We owe it to the American people who elected us to be in the majority. We owe it to them to elect a Speaker of the House to move our agenda that they elected us to accomplish.
Your colleague, Representative Ralph Norman, who's been a no vote on McCarthy and a member of the Freedom Caucus, says that he wants McCarthy to commit to voting against raising the debt ceiling later this year. Do you think that McCarthy should agree to that?
Well, it depends on what Ralph is talking about. Ralph is a friend of mine, colleague on the House Financial Services Committee. We all recognize that default is not an option, but what Ralph is advocating for, and frankly what I advocate for as well as a supporter of McCarthy for Speaker, is reform. We need to stop the spending spree in Washington that has produced this 40-year high inflation, that has given the American people $30 trillion in national debt. We do have to change the way Washington does business because we're on the road to bankruptcy. We've got to make some changes. And the debt limit law is flawed because it hasn't prevented the deficit spending, the spending spree. We might need to rethink and reimagine the debt ceiling law to actually force the reforms that have to happen to save America from bankruptcy. So I give Ralph, my colleague, credit for fighting for reform, but we also have to be unified if we're actually going to advance that agenda of fiscal responsibility.
Congressman, I really hate to ask this, and I don't want to seem alarmist here at all, but at the moment, as you're well aware, the country does not have a properly functioning legislative branch. No other business can be conducted until this is resolved. New members can't even be sworn in. What would happen if, God forbid, there is an emergency that needs to be dealt with immediately?
Well, look, I mean, obviously, the Congress needs to get going. We need to elect a Speaker so that we can get into the skiff, get the intelligence briefings, do the things that need to be done for the proper functioning of the government. But remember this as well, that the framers of the Constitution did not envision an efficient government. They envisioned a government that was complicated, that was a little messy, that reflected the diversity of our country. We have 435 different members of Congress from 435 different parts of our country. This is a diverse country with a lot of different views, and so the Congress reflects that diversity and that complexity. And the framers of the Constitution designed this place to have checks and balances, to be inefficient. That's the way they actually wanted it. And so it's going to take a little longer than normal, but it is a reflection of the differences of opinion in our country, ultimately we have to compromise, come together, reach consensus, but achieve those reforms that we're trying to achieve for the American people. That's why they elected a new Congress to begin with.
Can you and other lawmakers receive classified briefings at this moment? And also just want to confirm, until a speaker is elected, are you and your colleagues even getting paid right now?
Well, the Constitution sets the pay, and there is actually a constitutional prohibition on changing the pay, although I have voted in the past for a bill called No Budget, No Pay, meaning if we don't pass a budget, if we don't do the fundamental job of governing, we shouldn't get paid. At least it should go in escrow and not be paid out to us until we get the job done. I certainly would support that in this instance as well. The American people deserve that. But what I would also say is that we need to elect a speaker and move forward for those national security reasons. In fact, much of the national security work that we need to be doing is interrupted right now because we don't have a Speaker of the House, because we're not routinely getting those briefings. I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I'm the top Republican on the National Security Subcommittee for the House Financial Services Committee. We oversee sanctions. We oversee the Treasury Department's international portfolio. I can't get what I need to do my job right now because of what's going on. So it is imperative that these discussions continue tonight, that we proceed with these negotiations. Let's get the reforms. Let's bank those reforms. Let's improve the institution. But then ultimately, let's elect Kevin McCarthy Speaker and move forward with our agenda.
Congressman Andy Barr, we so appreciate you staying a little later for us. Really appreciate your time and insight.